Single dad veteran walked into 40. Yakuza members meeting leader bowed and cleared the room. But the shocking reason why will flip everything you thought you knew about power, fear, and respect. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Jack Harmon stood at the small kitchen counter of their Tokyo apartment, the morning sunlight streaming through the narrow window. His calloused hands moved with practiced efficiency as he prepared a traditional American breakfast, something familiar in this foreign land. The sizzle of bacon and the warm aroma of coffee filled their modest living space. "Lily!" he called out, his deep voice carrying down the short hallway. "Breakfast in 5 minutes." He heard a muffled "coming," followed by the sound of drawers opening and closing. Jack couldn't help but smile, remembering how Sarah, his late wife, used to rush around in the mornings too. The smile faded as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar ache in his chest. The rice cooker chimed, pulling him from his thoughts. He'd learned to make rice the Japanese way, a concession to their new life here. Jack portioned out the steaming rice into 2 bowls, adding a fried egg on top of each. Next to the bowls, he placed plates of bacon and toast. It wasn't exactly a traditional Japanese breakfast, but it wasn't fully American either, just like them now, caught between 2 worlds. Lily emerged from her room, her school uniform neat, but her dark hair still uncombed.
"Dad, have you seen my blue hair ribbon? The one Mom gave me?"
Jack's throat tightened at the mention of Sarah. "Check the bathroom counter. I saw it there when I was doing laundry yesterday." Lily disappeared again, and Jack heard her rummaging through the bathroom. He took the moment to close his eyes and take a deep breath, pushing away the image of Sarah tying that same ribbon in Lily's hair years ago. "Found it!" Lily called out triumphantly, returning to the kitchen while trying to smooth her hair into place. Jack watched her struggle with the ribbon for a moment before stepping in. "Here, let me help." "Dad, I can do it myself," Lily protested, but stood still as his fingers, more used to handling weapons than hair accessories, carefully gathered her hair into a neat ponytail. "There," he said softly, his hand lingering on her shoulder for a moment. "Just like Mom used to do it." Lily's reflection in the kitchen window showed a flash of sadness cross her face, but she quickly covered it with a smile. "Thanks, Dad." They sat down at their small table, the morning routine familiar but somehow still awkward. Jack watched as Lily picked at her rice, pushing the egg around with her chopsticks. "Everything okay?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "Yeah," Lily answered too quickly. "Just, school stuff." Jack nodded, knowing there was more but unsure how to ask. Since moving to Tokyo 6 months ago, he'd noticed Lily becoming more withdrawn. The language barrier at school, the cultural differences, the loss of her old friends, it was all taking its toll. "Your Japanese is getting better," he offered, trying to be encouraging. Lily shrugged. "Still not good enough. Everyone thinks I'm weird because I mix up words sometimes." "Hey," Jack said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. "You're doing great. Better than me, that's for sure." His attempt at humor earned him a small smile. The morning news played quietly on their small TV, the rapid-fire Japanese mostly incomprehensible to Jack. His security job required only basic language skills, but he felt the weight of his limitations every day. The military hadn't prepared him for this, being a single dad in a foreign country, trying to give his daughter a normal life while dealing with his own demons. "Dad?" Lily's voice pulled him back to the present. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "That faraway look. When you're thinking about, before." Jack straightened in his chair, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about work. Speaking of which, you've got cram school this evening, right?" Lily nodded, finishing her toast. "Until 7. Can I walk home with Aiko afterward?" "Not tonight, kiddo. I'm working late at the office building. I'll pick you up when you're done." "Dad, I'm 13. I can walk home by myself," Lily protested, the familiar argument starting again. Jack's jaw tightened. "Not in this neighborhood after dark. We've talked about this." "But..." "No buts. I'll be there at 7. His tone left no room for discussion, and he immediately regretted the harshness in his voice when he saw Lily's shoulders slump. The rest of breakfast passed in silence. Jack watched as Lily gathered her school bags, her movements precise and controlled, just like Sarah's had been. The thought sent another wave of grief through him, but he pushed it down. He had to stay focused, stay strong for Lily. "Have a good day at school," he called as she headed for the door. Lily paused, then turned back and gave him a quick hug. You too, Dad. At work, I mean. The door closed behind her, and Jack was left alone in their quiet apartment. He began clearing the breakfast dishes, his movements mechanical as his mind wandered. The morning sun caught the small shrine they'd set up for Sarah in the corner. Her photo, a few dried flowers, a couple of her favorite things. In the picture, she was laughing, her arms around a younger Lily. I'm trying, Sarah, he whispered to the empty room. I'm really trying. Hours later, Jack sat at his security desk in the office building, watching the monitors with trained attention. The job wasn't exciting, but it gave him purpose, structure, things he'd needed desperately after leaving the military. Still, as the evening grew later, his thoughts kept drifting to Lily. At her cram school across town, Lily stood outside the building, watching other students leave with their parents or friends. The street lamps were starting to come on, casting long shadows on the unfamiliar streets. She checked her phone, 6:45 p.m. Her father wouldn't be there for another 15 minutes at least. A group of Japanese students passed by, laughing and chatting. One girl glanced at Lily but quickly looked away when their eyes met. Lily hugged her backpack closer, feeling more alone than ever in this crowded city. Her gaze drifted to the narrow alleyways branching off the main street. The neon signs of nearby shops cast colorful reflections on the wet pavement, making the unfamiliar streets look almost magical. She wondered what secrets those alleys held, what adventures might be waiting just around the corner. For a moment, she could almost hear her mother's voice telling her stories about finding beauty in unexpected places. But her father's stern warnings echoed in her mind, keeping her rooted to her spot outside the cram school. So she waited, watching the shadows grow longer and the crowds thin out, feeling like a stranger in a city that still didn't feel like home. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the narrow streets of Tokyo, as Lily Harmon shifted her weight from one foot to the other outside her cram school. She checked her phone again. Still no message from her dad. The other students had long since dispersed, leaving her alone in the growing twilight. Just great, she muttered, adjusting her backpack straps. The familiar feeling of being invisible, of being left behind, crept over her. She knew her dad worked hard at his security job, but sometimes it felt like he was 1,000 miles away even when he was right next to her. A cool breeze carried the scent of grilling meat from somewhere nearby, making her stomach growl. Rather than standing around waiting, Lily decided to explore the neighborhood. She'd been wanting to anyway. The maze of alleyways had always intrigued her, with their vending machines glowing like beacons and tiny restaurants tucked away like secrets waiting to be discovered. I'll just take a quick look around, she told herself, stepping away from the school's entrance. Dad probably won't be here for at least another half hour. The first alley she entered was lined with potted plants and bicycle racks. A cat watched her from atop an air conditioning unit, its eyes reflecting the dim light. Lily smiled at it, feeling a little less alone. As she ventured deeper into the neighborhood, the modern storefronts gave way to older buildings, with weathered wooden doors and faded signs. The light grew dimmer as she walked, the tall buildings blocking out the setting Sunday. She should have turned back, but something drew her forward. Maybe it was the rebellion of doing something her overprotective father would never approve of. Or maybe it was just the desire to prove she wasn't a little kid anymore. A few turns later, Lily realized she'd wandered into an unfamiliar area. The buildings here were industrial, their concrete walls rising like cliffs on either side. A massive warehouse loomed ahead, its metal doors reflecting the last rays of sunlight. The street was eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic. Meanwhile, across town, Jack Harmon's heart raced as he checked his phone for the 10th time in as many minutes. No messages from Lily. He'd lost track of time at work, dealing with a security issue that had taken longer than expected. Now it was well past when he should have picked her up. Come on, pick up, he muttered, calling her number again. The phone rang endlessly before going to voicemail. Each unanswered ring made his chest tighter, memories of losing Sarah flooding back. He couldn't lose Lily, too. He wouldn't. Jack burst out of his office, barely remembering to clock out. His long strides ate up the distance as he headed for the train station, but the evening crowds moved too slowly for his racing mind. After 2 stops, he couldn't take it anymore and jumped off the train, deciding to run the rest of the way. His combat boots pounded the pavement as he sprinted through the streets, earning startled looks from passers-by. The familiar weight of his backpack thumped against his spine with each step, reminding him of other runs, other searches in distant deserts. No, he couldn't think about that now. Focus on finding Lily. When he reached the cram school, his worst fears were confirmed. No sign of his daughter. The security guard at the entrance remembered seeing her waiting earlier, but didn't know where she'd gone. Jack's training kicked in as he scanned the area, looking for clues, for any hint of which way she might have gone. A convenience store security camera pointed toward one of the side streets. Jack approached the owner, his military bearing helping convince the man to let him view the footage. There, a glimpse of Lily's school uniform disappearing down an alley about an hour ago. Jack followed her trail, asking shopkeepers and vendors if they'd seen a young foreign girl in a school uniform. Each confirmation pointed him deeper into the maze of back streets, away from the busy main roads and into an industrial area he didn't recognize. The warehouse appeared ahead of him, its massive form blocking out the evening sky. A sliver of light escaped from beneath one of the heavy metal doors. Jack's instincts screamed danger, but his daughter's backpack lay discarded near the entrance. His heart nearly stopped at the sight. Without hesitation, he grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. The scene that greeted him was straight out of his nightmares. Rows of hard-faced men in dark suits, tattoos visible at their wrists and necks, all turning to stare at him. Yakuza, dozens of them, gathered around long tables in what was clearly an important meeting. And there, at the far end of the room, stood Lily, her eyes wide with fear and surprise. Jack's combat training took over instantly. He moved with fluid precision, positioning himself between his daughter and the threat. His body tensed, ready for violence, as 40 pairs of eyes fixed on him with deadly focus. The warehouse fell silent except for the quiet hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the pounding of his own heart. "Dad," Lily whispered behind him, her voice small and scared. Jack's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds, looking for exits. His hand instinctively reached back to keep Lily behind him as the tension in the room thickened like smoke. Not a single person moved, the moment frozen in a deadly tableau of potential violence. In the stillness, Jack could hear Lily's quick, frightened breathing behind him. The sound centered him, reminded him of what mattered most. He might not make it out of here, but he'd make damn sure his daughter did. The warehouse door stood open behind them, spilling a rectangle of twilight onto the concrete floor. One chance. That's all they needed. The click of dress shoes on concrete broke the silence, as one of the men stood up from his seat at the head of the table. All eyes shifted to him, though Jack didn't dare take his gaze off the closest threats. The warehouse remained preternaturally quiet as the man took a single step forward, his expensive suit catching the harsh fluorescent light. The tension in the warehouse crackled like static electricity before a storm. One by one, the Yakuza members rose from their seats, hands slipping inside suit jackets where weapons surely waited. Jack's muscles coiled tight, ready to fight or flee. He could feel Lily trembling behind him, her fingers clutching the back of his jacket. The man in the expensive suit took another step forward, his face catching the harsh overhead light. He was older than most of the others, probably in his early 50s, with steel-gray temples and eyes that had seen too much. Something about his bearing commanded attention. This wasn't just any member of the clan. "Wait," the man said in English, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. His eyes narrowed as he studied Jack's face. "I know you." Jack didn't respond, keeping his attention split between the nearest threats and the path to the door. His mind raced. He'd never dealt with the Yakuza before, had actively avoided their territory since moving to Tokyo. How could this man know him? The leader raised his hand, and the other men froze in place. He took another step forward, his expression shifting from threatening to something more complex. "Iraq," he said slowly. 2009. An ambush outside Mosul. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. Images flashed through his mind. The taste of sand, the crack of gunfire, a young Japanese aid worker trapped in the crossfire. He'd never learned the man's name, just grabbed him and ran while bullets kicked up dust around them. "My brother," the leader continued, his voice growing softer. "You pulled him from that burning vehicle, carried him to safety while under fire." He turned to address his men in rapid Japanese, gesturing as he spoke. Jack caught fragments, enough to understand he was describing the rescue. The atmosphere in the warehouse shifted subtly. The men who had been ready to attack moments ago now looked at Jack with something approaching respect. A few even lowered their heads slightly. "Hiroshi Takeda," the leader said, touching his chest. The man you saved was my younger brother, Kenji. He bowed deeply, showing profound respect. I have wanted to thank you for many years. Jack felt oddly unsteady, as if the ground beneath his feet had suddenly changed texture. The memory of that day had haunted him for different reasons. It was the same week he'd learned of Sarah's diagnosis back home. He'd channeled all his fear for her into saving that young aid worker, running through gunfire as if bullets couldn't touch him. I remember, Jack managed to say. Is he? Alive and well, Takeda answered with a small smile. Married now with 2 children, thanks to you. He turned to his men and spoke sharply in Japanese. The warehouse erupted into motion as dozens of Yakuza members began gathering their things, bowing to Takeda before filing out quietly. Lily peered around Jack's shoulder, her fear giving way to curiosity as she watched the exodus. Dad, she whispered, what's happening? Jack kept his body between Lily and Takeda, but he felt the tension in his muscles beginning to ease. The warehouse was emptying quickly, the sound of car engines starting outside drifting through the open door. Takeda waited until the last of his men had left before speaking again. Please, he said, gesturing to a nearby chair. Sit. You are safe here, you and your daughter both. The words safe and Yakuza warehouse didn't quite fit together in Jack's mind, but he could read people well enough to sense Takeda's sincerity. Still, he remained standing, though he did let Lily step out from behind him. I never knew his name, Jack said quietly. Your brother. Everything was chaos that day, Takeda nodded. Kenji told me how you appeared like a spirit in the smoke, how you didn't hesitate even when the bullets came closer. He smiled slightly. He said you were either very brave or very crazy. Probably both, Jack admitted, earning a small giggle from Lily. The sound seemed to brighten the stark warehouse somehow. You were a different man then, Takeda observed, his dark eyes studying Jack's face. I see the weight you carry now. The loss. Jack stiffened. How could this man read him so easily? But then, people like Takeda didn't rise to power without understanding human nature. He probably saw the signs of grief as clearly as if they were written on Jack's skin. My wife, Jack said simply. Cancer. A few years after Iraq. Takeda bowed his head in acknowledgement of the loss. And now you raise your daughter alone, in a foreign land. He switched his attention to Lily, his stern features softening slightly. You must be very brave like your father. Lily straightened up, some of her usual spirit returning. I'm not afraid, she said, though her voice quivered slightly. Then you are braver than most of my men, Takeda said with surprising gentleness. He reached into his suit jacket, causing Jack to tense again, but withdrew only a business card. He held it out, not to Jack, but to Lily. If you ever need help in this city, call this number, day or night. Jack watched, astonished, as his daughter accepted the card with a small bow, just as they'd practiced for formal situations. The gesture seemed to please Takeda, who smiled fully for the first time. You have taught her our ways well, he said to Jack. Not many foreigners bothered to learn. Her mother would have wanted her to understand the culture, Jack replied quietly. To respect it. Takeda nodded slowly, then bowed again, deeper than before. You honored my family by saving my brother, he said. Now I honor you. You have friends here, Jack Harmon, remember that. The use of his full name startled Jack, and he hadn't introduced himself. But of course, someone like Takeda would have ways of getting information. The thought should have been unsettling, but instead, Jack felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. For the first time since leaving the military, since losing Sarah, someone saw him fully, not as a broken veteran or a struggling single father, but as a man worthy of respect. He found himself returning Takeda's bow, matching its depth exactly. When he straightened, the Yakuza leader was watching him with approval. The warehouse felt impossibly large now that it was empty, their small group standing in a pool of fluorescent light while shadows gathered in the corners. Through the open door, Jack could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. It was time to take Lily home. Thank you, he said simply, knowing Takeda would understand everything the words didn't say. The Yakuza leader inclined his head. Some debts can never be repaid, he replied, but they can be honored. Takeda gestured toward a small room off the main warehouse floor. Unlike the stark industrial space they'd just left, This area felt almost cozy, with traditional Japanese furnishings and warm lighting. A low table sat in the center, complete with a steaming pot of green tea. "Please," Takeda said, indicating the cushions beside the table. "Join me for a moment." Jack hesitated, his protective instincts still on high alert, but something in Takeda's demeanor had changed, the hard edge of authority softening into genuine warmth. He nodded, guiding Lily to sit beside him on the tatami mats. An elderly woman in a simple kimono appeared silently, pouring tea into delicate cups with practiced grace. The steam curled up in the dim light, carrying the gentle scent of green tea through the room. Jack watched as Takeda took the first sip, then allowed himself to taste the tea. "Your actions that day," Takeda began, setting his cup down carefully. "They went far beyond duty. The report said you ran back into the firefight 3 times to save civilians." His dark eyes held a mixture of respect and curiosity. "My brother told me you never even asked his name." Jack shifted uncomfortably on his cushion. He'd never been good at receiving praise, especially for that time in his life. "Anyone would have done the same," he said quietly. Takeda shook his head. "No, Mr. Harmon, not anyone. That is why I remember." He paused, studying Jack's face. "But now you are here in Tokyo, with your daughter. This is unexpected." Lily sat very still beside Jack, her eyes darting between the two men. She'd never heard this story about her father, and Jack could feel her curiosity radiating off her in waves. "Life changes," Jack said simply, thinking of Sarah and all that had happened after Iraq. "We needed a fresh start." Takeda nodded thoughtfully. "Tokyo can provide that." But his expression grew serious. "This particular neighborhood is not safe for children to wander alone." He looked pointedly at Lily, who had the grace to blush. "There are complex relationships here. Business matters that can become dangerous." Jack understood the warning in Takeda's words. Despite this moment of connection, they lived in very different worlds. "It won't happen again," he said firmly, giving Lily a stern look. As the adults talked, movement near the doorway caught Lily's attention. A girl about her age stood half hidden in the shadows, watching the scene with intense interest. She wore a neat school uniform from one of Tokyo's prestigious private academies, her long dark hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. But something in her eyes spoke of sadness, of secrets kept too long. The girl, Takeda's niece, Lily would later learn, was whispering urgently to another woman in rapid Japanese. Lily couldn't understand most of it, but one phrase kept repeating, "Nigeru, run away." The girl must have felt Lily's gaze because she suddenly looked directly at her. In that moment, something passed between them, a flash of recognition, of shared loneliness perhaps. The girl's carefully composed expression cracked just slightly, revealing a desperate need for connection. Lily offered a small, gentle smile. The other girl's eyes widened slightly, and she returned the smile with the tiniest nod before disappearing into the shadows. "It's time we were going," Jack said, rising from his cushion. The movement snapped Lily's attention back to her father. "Thank you for your hospitality, Takeda-san." Takeda stood as well, bowing slightly. "The honor was mine. Please remember what I said about this area." His eyes flickered to Lily. "It would pain me greatly if anything were to happen to the daughter of the man who saved my brother." The walk home through Tokyo's nighttime streets was quiet at first. Jack's jaw was set in that way that told Lily a lecture was coming. She braced herself for it. "What were you thinking?" he finally asked, his voice tight with leftover fear. "You know better than to wander off in strange neighborhoods, especially after dark." "I was just tired of waiting," Lily muttered, kicking at a loose pebble on the sidewalk. "You were late again." Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Lily recognized as both frustration and guilt. "I know, and I'm sorry about that. But that doesn't excuse putting yourself in danger. Those men in there, they're not people we want to be involved with." "That girl didn't look dangerous," Lily said softly, thinking of the sad eyes and perfect posture of Takeda's niece. Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. "What girl?" "The one in the doorway. She looked about my age." Lily met her father's worried gaze. "She looked like she needed a friend, Dad." Jack's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, Lily saw the flash of pain that always appeared when she did something that reminded him of her mother. Sarah had always been the one who could never turn away from someone in need. "Lily," he said gently. Sometimes situations are more complicated than they appear. Promise me you'll stay away from that area from now on. But Lily was still thinking about the whispered conversation she'd overheard, the desperation in the other girl's eyes. She nodded to appease her father. But in her heart, she knew this wouldn't be the last time their paths crossed. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window of their small Tokyo apartment, casting warm squares of light across the breakfast table. Jack stood at the stove, methodically flipping pancakes while keeping one eye on Lily, who sat quietly picking at her food. About yesterday, Jack began, sliding another pancake onto her plate. I need you to understand something important. Lily's fork pushed a piece of pancake around in the syrup, making abstract patterns. Dad, I know what you're going to say. I don't think you do. Jack sat down across from her, his coffee cup warming his hands. The man we met, Takeda-san. His family is involved in very serious business. His niece. It's not safe for you to get involved with her. Her name is Aiko, Lily said softly, finally looking up. And she looks so lonely, Dad. Just like I felt when we first moved here. Jack's chest tightened at the memory of those first difficult months. After Sarah's death, the move to Tokyo had seemed like a chance to start fresh. But watching Lily struggle to adjust, to make friends, had been harder than he'd expected. I understand wanting to help, sweetheart. But sometimes the kindest thing we can do is keep our distance, for everyone's safety. That's not what Mom would have said. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jack took a deep breath, fighting the familiar ache that came whenever Sarah was mentioned. Your mother had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. But she also understood that sometimes love means making tough choices to protect the people we care about. Lily pushed her plate away, her face set in that stubborn expression that reminded him so much of Sarah. Maybe Aiko needs protecting too. Later that morning, Jack made his way through the winding streets of Setagaya to the small community center where his veteran support group met. The familiar faces of other expatriate veterans greeted him as he entered the fluorescent-lit room. Mike Chen, a former Marine who'd married a Japanese woman and stayed after his service, noticed Jack's troubled expression right away. Rough morning? Jack settled into one of the metal folding chairs, joining the loose circle. You could say that. As the group settled in, their facilitator, Dave Thompson, opened the session. Jack usually stayed quiet during these meetings, but today the weight of yesterday's encounter pressed against his chest until he had to speak. Something happened yesterday, he began, and the room grew attentive. Jack rarely shared. I accidentally walked into a Yakuza meeting. A low whistle came from someone in the group. Dave leaned forward, his gray eyes concerned. That must have been intense. Want to talk about it? Jack described the warehouse, the tension, and the unexpected recognition from Takeda. As he spoke, he noticed the other veterans exchanging worried glances. Stay away from that situation, Jack, Mike advised firmly. I've been here 15 years, and I've seen how these things can go sideways fast. Several others nodded in agreement, but Robert Mason, a Vietnam veteran in his 70s who'd been living in Japan for decades, cleared his throat. Sometimes, he said slowly, God puts us in difficult situations for a reason. With all due respect, Bob, Mike interjected, we're talking about the Yakuza here. Robert's weathered face creased in a gentle smile. I remember a young army medic in Saigon who treated enemy soldiers alongside our own. People said he was crazy, that he was putting himself in danger. But he saved lives, on both sides. He fixed Jack with a knowing look. Sometimes, the dangerous path is exactly where we're meant to be. The words stayed with Jack throughout the day, echoing in his mind as he worked his security shift at the foreign embassy. By the time he arrived home that evening, his thoughts were still tangled around Robert's words. Lily sat cross-legged on the living room floor, supposedly doing her homework. But Jack noticed how her phone kept lighting up with messages, and how she'd smile slightly each time she replied. Math problems that funny? He asked, trying to keep his tone light. Lily started slightly, turning the phone face down. Just talking to a friend from school. Jack watched as she quickly typed another message, her fingers moving with the rapid precision of someone trying not to get caught. He recognized the signs. He'd been a teenager once too, though it felt like a lifetime ago. This friend wouldn't happen to be named Aiko, would it? Lily's fingers froze over the phone. She looked up at him, a mix of defiance and guilt in her expression.
She just wants someone to talk to, Dad. She's not asking for anything else.
Jack sank into the armchair, suddenly feeling very tired. Lily, please don't make me stop talking to her, Lily said quickly. She's different from the others at school. She understands what it's like to feel trapped. The last word hung in the air, making Jack's heart ache. He thought of Robert's words at the meeting, about God putting people in difficult situations for a reason. He thought of Sarah, who had never turned away from someone in need, no matter how complicated the situation. The phone buzzed again, and Lily glanced at it anxiously, clearly torn between answering and continuing their conversation. Just be careful, Jack said finally. No meeting in person without telling me first. No sharing personal information. Promise me. Relief flooded Lily's face.
I promise, Dad. Really.
She hugged her phone to her chest, and for a moment she looked so much like her mother that it took his breath away. And Lily, he added as she reached for her phone again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. She nodded, already absorbed in responding to what he now knew was another message from Aiko. Jack watched her, wondering if he was making the right choice. The easy path would be to forbid the friendship entirely, to shield his daughter from the complications and potential dangers of being involved with a Yakuza family. But as he observed the small smile playing on Lily's lips as she typed, he remembered what it was like to be young and lonely in a foreign country. Sometimes, he reflected, the most dangerous choice and the right choice were the same thing. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across their small living room as Jack helped Lily arrange snacks on the coffee table. Rice crackers, green tea, and a plate of chocolate cookies. A peace offering of sorts for their earlier argument about this very visit. Remember what we agreed, Jack said, adjusting the plate of cookies for the third time. 2 hours for homework, that's all.
I know, Dad.
Lily bounced on her toes, checking her phone again. She'll be here any minute. The doorbell chimed softly, and Lily rushed to answer it. Jack hung back, watching as his daughter opened the door to reveal a slim figure in a crisp school uniform. Aiko Takeda stood hesitantly at the threshold, clutching her backpack like a shield. Welcome, Lily said in careful Japanese, bowing slightly.
Please come in.
Aiko returned the bow, deeper and more formal. Thank you for having me. Her voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes darting around the apartment before settling briefly on Jack. Jack stepped forward, trying to make his tall frame less intimidating. Please, make yourself comfortable. He gestured to the living room, where textbooks and notebooks were already spread across the low table. The girls settled onto cushions, and Jack retreated to the kitchen under the pretense of making tea. Through the open doorway, he watched them work, heads bent close together over their books. Gradually, Aiko's rigid posture began to soften. An hour passed peacefully. Jack moved around the apartment, tidying up while keeping a watchful eye on their guest. He noticed how Aiko flinched at sudden noises. A car horn from the street below, the neighbor's door slamming. The girl carried tension in her shoulders like a heavy coat she couldn't shed. Would you like more tea? Jack asked, approaching with the kettle. Aiko looked up, and something in her expression made him pause. Behind the polite smile he saw fear, the kind he recognized from his time in Iraq, in the eyes of civilians caught between warring factions. Yes, please, she said softly. As Jack poured, her hands trembled slightly around her cup. Harmon-san, thank you for allowing me to visit. You're welcome here, he replied, meaning it despite his reservations. Lily touched her friend's arm. Dad, Aiko needs to tell you something. Jack set down the kettle, his military instincts stirring at the shift in atmosphere. He pulled up a chair, giving Aiko his full attention. My uncle, Aiko began, then stopped, twisting her fingers in her lap. He is a good man, in his way. But the clan, they expect things from me. Arrangements have been made. What kind of arrangements? Jack asked, though he had a sinking feeling he knew. Marriage, to unite two families. Aiko's voice cracked. I am to be given to the son of another clan leader when I turn 16. Next year. Lily grabbed her friend's hand. That's why she has to get away, Dad. She can't stay there. Jack ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of what they were asking settle onto his shoulders. Aiko, leaving the clan. It's not just dangerous for you, it would put everyone who helps you at risk. I know. Aiko lifted her chin, and for a moment, Jack saw past her fragile exterior to the steel beneath. I would rather die trying to be free than live as a peace offering between criminals. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth and desperation. Jack looked at his daughter, saw the plea in her eyes, and knew he was already lost. Sarah would have helped without hesitation, and she would have been right to do so. Please, Dad, Lily whispered. We have to help her. Jack leaned forward, clasping his hands together. Aiko, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if I help you, there's no going back. Your uncle saved my life once, in a way. Breaking faith with him. He trailed off, the implications clear. I understand, Aiko said. But my uncle is not the one I fear. It is the others, the ones who see me only as property to be traded. Jack nodded slowly, memories of war-torn streets and desperate choices flooding back. All right, he said finally. I'll help. But we do this carefully, and you both follow my instructions exactly. No risks, no heroics. Relief broke across Aiko's face like sunrise. She bowed deeply, her forehead nearly touching the table. Thank you, Harmon-san. I will never forget this kindness. Lily threw her arms around her father's neck. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Jack replied, already running through scenarios and contingencies in his mind. This won't be easy. They spent the next hour discussing safe communication methods and establishing ground rules. When it was time for Aiko to leave, Jack insisted on walking her to the station, despite her polite protests. At the door, Aiko turned to Lily. See you at school tomorrow, same as always, Lily promised, hugging her friend. As Jack and Aiko descended the apartment stairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stepped off a cliff, trusting in faith alone to catch him. Outside, the evening streets were filling with commuters heading home. Somewhere in the gathering shadows, unknown eyes watched their building. But Jack and Aiko walked on, two figures among many in the Tokyo twilight, carrying the weight of their secret into the gathering dark. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. After school, Aiko would arrive at their apartment with her textbooks and a shy smile that grew warmer each visit. Jack found himself looking forward to these afternoons, watching from the kitchen as the girls spread their homework across the living room floor. Can you help me with this sentence, Harmon-san? Aiko asked one afternoon, holding up her English workbook. Her voice, once barely above a whisper, now carried more confidence. Jack settled onto the floor beside her, careful not to disturb Lily's math papers. Let's see what you've got there. Aiko pointed to a practice paragraph about family. Her neat handwriting filled the margins with notes in both Japanese and English. I understand most words, but the grammar. She wrinkled her nose in frustration. English grammar is tricky, Jack said, remembering his own struggles with Japanese. But you're doing really well. Here, let's break it down. As they worked through the exercise together, Jack noticed how Aiko leaned in, hanging on every word. She reminded him of Lily at a younger age, eager to learn and desperate to please. The thought squeezed his heart. Dad makes a pretty good teacher, right? Lily chimed in, abandoning her math to join them. He helped me with my book reports all through elementary school. Aiko nodded earnestly. He explains things clearly, not like my regular teachers who just expect us to know everything already. The simple praise warmed Jack's chest. These quiet moments of normalcy felt like a gift, one he knew might be temporary, but precious all the same. That evening, like several before it, Aiko stayed for dinner. Jack had learned to cook a few Japanese dishes since moving to Tokyo, but tonight he made his signature American-style spaghetti and meatballs. The girls set the table while he finished the sauce, their cheerful chatter filling the small kitchen. I've never had this before, Aiko admitted as she twirled noodles around her fork with careful precision. It's Dad's specialty, Lily said proudly. Mom taught him how to make it. A familiar pang hit Jack at the mention of Sarah, but it was softer now, wrapped in warm memories rather than sharp grief. He watched Aiko take her first bite, her eyes widening in delight. This is amazing, she exclaimed, then quickly covered her mouth, embarrassed by her outburst. Jack laughed, a real laugh that surprised even him. Eat as much as you want. There's plenty. The meal continued with comfortable conversation, punctuated by Lily's attempts to teach Aiko how to twirl spaghetti the proper way. When Aiko accidentally flicked sauce onto her uniform, instead of panicking as she might have days ago, she joined in their laughter. But even as Jack savored these moments, his military-trained instincts wouldn't let him ignore the signs. Earlier that day, he'd spotted the same silver sedan parked near Lily's school that he'd seen outside their apartment building. On their walk home, a man in a dark suit had seemed too interested in his phone while trailing 30 paces behind them. After clearing the dishes, Jack stepped out onto their small balcony for his evening ritual of checking the surroundings. The spring air carried the mix of cherry blossoms and city exhaust that he'd come to associate with Tokyo. 6 stories below, traffic moved steadily along their street. Then he saw it. A black car idling in the shadow of a convenience store. Its engine was running, evidenced by the faint exhaust visible in the cooling evening air. The same car he'd noticed yesterday, and the day before. Inside, he could hear the girls laughing over some shared joke, their voices carrying through the sliding glass door. The sound of their happiness made his jaw clench. These children, because that's what they were, just children, deserved to laugh without shadows lurking in the darkness. Jack gripped the balcony railing, his knuckles whitening. In the past week, Aiko had transformed from Takeda's niece into someone who felt like family. He saw it in the way she helped Lily with her Japanese homework, in her careful attention when he explained English phrases, in her growing collection of small belongings left scattered around their apartment, a hair clip here, a pencil case there. She kept her neatly folded socks by the door, right next to Lily's mismatched pairs. She knew where they stored the extra teacups. She had a favorite spot on their worn couch, and she'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. The black car's engine revved softly in the gathering dusk. Jack remained still, letting the shadows hide him as he memorized details. The make and model, the slightly tinted windows, the way the driver's silhouette remained unnaturally static. Behind him, the balcony door slid open. "Dad?" Lily's voice carried a note of concern. "Aiko's brother's coming to pick her up soon." "I'll be right there," he said, keeping his voice casual. The girls didn't need to know about the car, about his growing certainty that their borrowed peace was being monitored. He took one last look at the street below, committing the scene to memory. The black car remained in its spot, a dark reminder that some choices, once made, cast long shadows. The meeting place Takeda had chosen was a small traditional tea house tucked away in a quiet corner of Tokyo. Jack arrived early, scanning the private room with military precision. Simple tatami mats covered the floor, and delicate paper screens filtered the afternoon light. The space felt both peaceful and somehow tense, like the calm before a storm. Takeda arrived precisely on time, dressed in an impeccable dark suit that seemed at odds with the room's simplicity. 2 bodyguards positioned themselves outside the sliding door, their presence felt but unseen. "Harmon-san," Takeda said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for coming." Jack returned the bow, noting how the Yakuza leader's usual stern expression carried an unusual weight today. They knelt on opposite sides of the low table, where an elderly woman silently served them green tea before disappearing. "I need to return Aiko," Jack said directly, his hands wrapped around the warm tea bowl. "She can't keep staying at our apartment. It's not safe for anyone." Takeda took a measured sip of his tea, his face unreadable. The silence stretched between them until Jack wondered if he'd somehow offended the man. Finally, Takeda set down his cup with deliberate care. "You speak of safety," Takeda said, his voice low and controlled. "Yet you do not understand the full situation." "Then help me understand," Jack replied, leaning forward slightly. "Because right now, I've got a scared teenage girl practically living in my home, and cars watching my building day and night." Something flickered across Takeda's features. Pain, perhaps, or regret. He reached inside his suit jacket, and Jack tensed instinctively. But Takeda only withdrew an old photograph, placing it carefully on the table between them. In the photo, a much younger Aiko smiled broadly at the camera, holding hands with a woman who shared her delicate features. "Her mother," Takeda explained. "My sister. She died protecting Aiko from a rival clan's attack 5 years ago." Jack felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. He thought of Sarah, of Lily, of how quickly life could change. "I want Aiko safe," Takeda continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "More than you can imagine. But in our world, leaving the clan openly," he shook his head slowly, It would mean bloodshed. Not just for her, but for everyone who helped her. So what's the alternative? Jack asked. Keep her trapped in this life forever? Takeda's eyes met his, sharp and intense. You are a man of honor, Harmon-san. I saw it in Iraq when you saved my brother, and I see it now in how you protect these girls. But that same honor makes you dangerous. He leaned forward. If my rivals learn that Aiko is under your protection, both our families will become targets. The implication hung heavy in the air. Jack thought of Lily, of her bright smile and fierce heart, of how she'd already lost one parent. The car's outside my apartment, Jack said. Your men? Takeda nodded. For now, they keep others away, but I cannot guarantee this protection forever. He picked up the photograph of Aiko and her mother, studying it with sad eyes. Sometimes, to truly protect those we love, we must appear to do nothing at all. Jack felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. What are you asking me to do? For now, nothing. Continue as you are. Let Aiko find comfort in your home, in your daughter's friendship. Takeda's voice grew harder. But understand this. If trouble comes, you must be prepared to turn her away. To protect your own daughter first. The words felt like ice in Jack's stomach. You're asking me to choose between them. I am asking you to be wise, Takeda corrected. To understand that good intentions can lead to terrible consequences in our world. They sat in heavy silence, the tea growing cold between them. Outside, daily life continued. Distant traffic, birds calling, the soft shuffle of the tea house staff. Inside, Jack wrestled with the impossible choice being laid before him. Your daughter, Takeda said suddenly, his tone softer. She reminds me of Aiko. Before, he gestured vaguely. Before everything, keep her safe, Harmon-san. Some shadows are too dark for children to bear. Jack stood, his muscles stiff from kneeling. I'll do what I think is right, he said firmly. Takeda remained seated but inclined his head respectfully. That is what I fear. The walk home felt longer than usual, Takeda's words echoing in Jack's mind. The spring evening was pleasant, cherry blossoms drifting on the breeze, but he barely noticed. His thoughts kept circling back to the impossible situation before him. When he reached his apartment building, he took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the extra time to compose himself. But as he opened his front door, the sight that greeted him made his heart ache. Lily and Aiko sat cross-legged on the floor, textbooks spread around them, but their worried expressions told him they hadn't been studying. They looked up at him with matching anxious eyes. Dad? Lily asked, her voice small. Is everything okay? Aiko's face was pale. Her hands clutched tightly in her lap. She didn't speak, but her fear was plain to see. Jack forced a smile he didn't feel. Everything's fine, he said, hanging up his jacket. Just had some business to take care of. He couldn't tell them about Takeda's warning, about the choice he might have to make. Let them have this moment, he thought. Let them be just girls, just friends, just for a little while longer. Who wants to help me make dinner? He asked, heading to the kitchen. Me! Lily jumped up, pulling Aiko along with her. We can teach Aiko how to make your famous grilled cheese. As the girls followed him into the kitchen, chattering about cheese and bread preferences, Jack silently prayed he was making the right decision. For now, at least, he would keep Takeda's words to himself. The shadows could wait outside a little longer. The Shibuya shopping district buzzed with its usual Saturday energy. Crowds flowed like rivers between the towering department stores, and cheerful J-pop music drifted from shop speakers. Jack walked slightly behind Lily and Aiko, keeping both girls in his sight while maintaining a careful distance that let them feel independent. The girls paused at a store window displaying colorful phone cases, their heads bent together as they pointed and giggled. Jack couldn't help but smile, seeing how Aiko had slowly begun to relax over the past week. Her shoulders weren't as tense, and her laugh came more easily now. Dad! Lily called out, waving him over. Can we go inside? Aiko found one that matches mine. Jack nodded, but something made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Years of combat had taught him to trust these instincts. His eyes swept the crowd, taking in faces, postures, anything out of place. Inside the store, the girls browsed the displays while Jack positioned himself near the entrance, pretending to examine a rack of headphones. That's when he spotted him, a young man in a sharp suit, moving too purposefully through the casual shoppers. The man's right hand never left his jacket pocket. "Time to go," Jack said quietly, moving closer to the girls. But before they could reach the exit, the man stepped directly into their path. "Aiko-chan," the man said in Japanese, his tone falsely pleasant. A dragon tattoo peeked from beneath his collar. "Your uncle's rivals send their regards." Jack stepped forward, placing himself between the man and the girls. He could feel Aiko trembling behind him, her fingers clutching the back of his jacket. "This is not the place," Jack said in firm Japanese, keeping his voice low to avoid drawing attention. "There are too many witnesses." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're not here for violence, American. Just delivering a message." He leaned slightly to address Aiko directly. "You belong to us now. Your uncle's protection means nothing." Jack's hands clenched into fists, but he forced them to relax. Starting a fight in a crowded store would only endanger more people. "Message delivered," he said coldly. "Now leave." The man straightened his tie with deliberate slowness. "Enjoy your shopping," he said, then melted back into the crowd outside. Jack hurried the girls toward the emergency exit at the back of the store, taking a circuitous route home that involved multiple train changes. Aiko hadn't spoken a word since the encounter, her face pale and drawn. Lily kept an arm around her friend's shoulders, throwing worried glances at her father. They arrived home as evening settled over Tokyo. Jack checked every room before letting the girls inside, then secured each lock with methodical precision. He sent them to Lily's room with strict instructions to stay put and call him if they heard anything unusual. In the kitchen, Jack pulled his pistol from its hidden compartment and placed it on the table. The weight of it felt both familiar and wrong in this peaceful space where they ate breakfast and helped with homework. He sank into a chair, the events of the day pressing down on him like a physical weight. "Lord," he whispered, closing his eyes. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing here, but these girls need protection, and I can't turn my back on that. Please, help me keep them safe." The kitchen clock ticked steadily in the silence. From Lily's room, he could hear the soft murmur of the girls' voices and occasional quiet laughter, somehow finding comfort in each other despite the day's fears. Jack opened his eyes and stared at his weapon, remembering his wife's words from years ago. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting, it's choosing to protect instead. He checked the locks again, then settled back at the table for a long night's vigil, praying his presence would be enough to keep the shadows at bay. The morning sun painted Tokyo's streets in gentle golden hues as Jack guided the girls toward the small international church tucked between modern office buildings. The simple wooden cross above its door stood out among the sleek glass and steel surroundings. Lily skipped ahead, her sundress swishing, while Aiko walked close to Jack, her eyes darting nervously at every passing car. "It's okay," Jack assured her softly. "This is a safe place." The church's heavy doors opened to reveal worn carpet and wooden pews that could have been from any small-town American chapel. The familiar smell of old hymnals and coffee from the fellowship hall brought back memories of Sundays with Sarah, back when faith came easier to Jack. A handful of families filled the pews, mostly expatriates, with a sprinkling of local Japanese members. The pastor, a silver-haired American who'd served in Japan for 30 years, greeted them warmly at the door. "Welcome back, Jack, Lily," he smiled, then turned to Aiko with genuine warmth.
"And who's this young lady?"
"This is our friend Aiko," Lily answered proudly. "She's staying with us for a while." They settled into a pew near the back, where Jack could keep an eye on both exits. Old habits die hard. Aiko sat stiffly, clearly uncertain about the unfamiliar environment. But as the service began, Jack watched her tension slowly ease. The congregation rose for the first hymn, Amazing Grace. Jack hadn't sung it since Sarah's funeral, but today, something stirred in his chest as the piano's opening notes filled the sanctuary. Lily's clear voice rose beside him, and even Aiko began humming along by the second verse, following the English words in the hymnal Jack held between them. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. The words washed over him like a healing balm. Jack's voice cracked on, "Was lost, but now am found," remembering all the times he'd felt lost since leaving the military, since losing Sarah. But here, in this moment, with these two girls beside him, he felt something long dormant, beginning to wake. During the testimony portion of the service, an elderly Japanese woman stood to share how she'd found faith late in life, after years of feeling trapped in cultural expectations. "God's love knows no boundaries," she said in careful English. No clan, no family, no tradition can limit his grace. Jack felt Aiko stiffen beside him. He glanced down to see tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away with her sleeve, but her whispered words caught him off guard. I never knew there could be such kindness outside the clan. They always said the outside world was cruel. The pastor's sermon touched on finding family in unexpected places, how God could rebuild what was broken. Jack found himself nodding, remembering Sarah's favorite saying, God doesn't waste pain, He transforms it. After the service, they lingered in the fellowship hall, where Lily introduced Aiko to some of the other teenagers. Jack watched as Aiko's shy smile grew more confident, accepting a cookie from one of the church ladies who always brought homemade treats. On the walk home, Aiko's steps were lighter. The songs were beautiful, she said softly. Even though I didn't understand all the words, I could feel something peaceful. That's the Holy Spirit, Lily explained with the simple confidence of youth. Dad says it's like a warm hug for your heart. Jack smiled, remembering when he'd told her that years ago when she'd asked about faith after her mother's death. He'd struggled to maintain his own belief since then, but seeing it alive in his daughter helped keep his flickering flame of faith from completely dying out. Back at the apartment, the girls insisted on trying to recreate the church lady's cookies. Jack supervised from the kitchen doorway as they measured flour and sugar, their laughter filling the small space as Aiko accidentally spilled vanilla extract on her shirt. Dad, we need your help, Lily called out, holding up the electric mixer with bewilderment. We can't figure out which speed to use. Jack stepped in, showing them how to start slow to avoid a flour explosion. The familiar motions of baking, teaching the girls something his wife had once taught him, brought a bittersweet comfort. Sarah would have loved this moment, loved seeing Lily growing into such a caring young woman, loved helping Aiko discover simple joys she'd been denied. The apartment filled with the warm scent of vanilla and butter as the first batch baked. Lily taught Aiko how to tell if the cookies were done by looking for golden brown edges, just like Sarah had taught her. They sat at the kitchen table, sampling their creation with glasses of cold milk, and for a brief, beautiful moment, everything felt right. Jack watched the girls share proud smiles over their successful baking experiment, saw how naturally they'd fallen into a sisterly rhythm. The weight of danger still lingered at the edges of his mind, but right here, right now, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the peaceful certainty that he was exactly where God needed him to be. It was like having a family again, not replacing what was lost, but building something new from the broken pieces, different, but whole in its own way. As Lily showed Aiko how to dunk her cookie in milk the proper way, Jack offered up a silent prayer of gratitude for this unexpected gift of grace. The afternoon sun was setting when Jack's phone rang. His heart stopped at Lily's panicked voice. Dad, they took her. They grabbed Aiko. Lily's words tumbled out between sobs. These men in suits? They pushed us into an alley after cram school. I tried to hold on to her, Dad. I really tried. Lily, where are you now? Jack's military training kicked in, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest. I'm at the convenience store near school, the one with the blue sign. She hiccuped through tears. They drove away in a black car. Dad, I'm so scared for her. Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming. Jack grabbed his keys and the gun he kept locked in his dresser. As he rushed down the stairs, he dialed Takeda's number. The Yakuza leader answered on the first ring. Harmon-san? They took Aiko. Your rivals. Jack's words came out clipped as he sprinted to his car. Your brother's life for hers. Help me find her. A long pause. Then, meet me at the warehouse. 10 minutes. Jack first collected Lily, who fell into his arms sobbing. He dropped her at their elderly neighbor's apartment with strict instructions to lock the doors, then sped toward the warehouse district. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. The warehouse stood dark against the twilight sky. Takeda waited outside, flanked by 2 men. His usual stern expression was replaced by something Jack recognized, the raw fear of a father whose child was in danger. My men spotted the car heading toward Shibuya, Takeda said without preamble. I know where they're likely holding her. They piled into Takeda's black SUV, Jack in the passenger seat. As they wove through Tokyo's crowded streets, Takeda spoke in low tones. These men, they're not like us. No code of honor. They deal in things. He paused, jaw clenching. Things I would never touch. Jack nodded, understanding the unspoken. Some lines, even criminals wouldn't cross. The SUV pulled up behind an abandoned pachinko parlor. Through the grimy windows, faint light flickered from the basement. Takeda's men melted into the shadows, taking up positions around the building. 4 men inside, Takeda murmured, checking his phone. Armed. Aiko is in the basement. Jack pulled his gun, checking the clip. I'll take point. You're too valuable a target. Takeda's hand shot out, gripping Jack's arm. She is my blood. Their eyes met in the dim light. In that moment, they weren't soldier and gangster, just 2 fathers ready to walk through fire for their children. They moved silently through the building's back entrance. Jack's combat training merged with Takeda's intimate knowledge of Yakuza tactics. They cleared the first floor efficiently, using hand signals to communicate. Muffled voices drifted up from the basement stairs. A girl's frightened cry made both men freeze. Please. I want to go home. Aiko's voice. Jack's finger tightened on the trigger. Beside him, Takeda's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. They descended the stairs like shadows. At the bottom, Jack held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. They burst through the door. 4 men spun toward them, reaching for weapons. But Jack and Takeda moved faster. Jack's first shot took down the man holding Aiko. Takeda's blade flashed in the dim light, disarming another. The remaining 2 backed away, hands raised. The girl is under my protection. Takeda's voice carried deadly authority. Touch her again. Your entire operation burns. Aiko scrambled toward them, tears streaming down her face. Jack kept his gun trained on the men, while Takeda wrapped his coat around her shoulders. Uncle, she whispered, pressing her face into his chest. The tenderness in Takeda's expression as he held his niece made Jack's throat tight. He'd seen that same look in the mirror, watching himself with Lily. They backed out slowly, keeping the men covered until they reached the stairs. Outside, Takeda's men had secured the perimeter. No one had followed. The drive back was silent except for Aiko's quiet sniffles. She sat between them in the front seat, clinging to her uncle's sleeve while leaning against Jack's arm. 2 protectors, 2 fathers, titles that transcended the barriers between them. At Jack's apartment building, Takeda helped Aiko out of the car. She looked up at her uncle, then at Jack. Thank you, she whispered, bowing deeply to both men. Takeda turned to Jack, his usual stoic mask back in place, but something had shifted in his eyes. You risked your life for my family tonight. I am in your debt. Jack shook his head. No debt. Just fathers protecting children. A ghost of a smile touched Takeda's lips. He bowed, lower than Jack had ever seen him bow before. Upstairs, Jack found Lily pacing by the door. She threw herself into his arms, then pulled Aiko into a fierce hug. The girls clung to each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Jack collapsed into his kitchen chair, the adrenaline finally wearing off. His hands shook as he set his gun on the table. The events of the night played through his mind. How seamlessly he and Takeda had worked together. How the man's facade had cracked when he held his niece. A criminal, yes, but also a man of honor. A father figure trying to protect his own, just like Jack. He watched the girls huddled on the couch, speaking in whispered Japanese, and felt a profound exhaustion settle into his bones. But beneath the fatigue was something else, a sense of rightness, of having done what needed to be done, regardless of the lines it crossed. The morning felt different as Jack and Lily walked to school together. Cherry blossoms drifted lazily through the air, dotting the sidewalk with delicate pink petals. After the rescue, things had slowly settled into a cautious routine. Aiko now lived with them openly, with Takeda's blessing, attending the same school as Lily. Jack watched the girls walk ahead of him, their Navy school uniforms matching as they chatted and laughed. The sight warmed his heart. For the first time since moving to Tokyo, he felt like they had found their place. Dad, you're hovering again, Lily called over her shoulder, but her tone was playful rather than annoyed. She understood now why he was protective. Just enjoying the view, he replied with a small smile. The morning sun caught the healing scratch on Lily's cheek, a reminder of that terrifying night at the pachinko parlor. But she wore it like a badge of courage, proof that she had helped save her friend. At the school gates, both girls hugged him goodbye. Aiko's embrace lingered a moment longer, still unused to such open affection. "Thank you, Jack-san," she whispered, as she did every morning. He watched until they disappeared into the building before heading to his security job. The weight of his concealed pistol was reassuring against his side, though he hoped he'd never need to use it again. Across town, in a dimly lit office, Takeda's lieutenant Shinji sat before 3 men in expensive suits. Money changed hands under the table. "The girl is living with the American now," Shinji said in low tones. "Takeda has gone soft, letting her stay with outsiders." The rival boss counted the stack of bills. "And the security schedule?" "The American works late Tuesdays and Thursdays. The apartment is on the 4th floor, west side. I've drawn you a map." Shinji slid a folded paper across the table, his hands trembling slightly. "You've done well," the boss said. "Your loyalty will be remembered when we take control." That evening, Jack's apartment felt peaceful. The girl sat at the kitchen table doing homework while he prepared dinner. The familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and the gentle murmur of their voices filled him with contentment. Aiko looked up from her textbook. "Jack-san, may I invite my uncle for dinner soon? He seems lonely lately." Jack nodded, surprising himself with how natural it felt. "Of course. Maybe this weekend?" A sharp knock at the door cut through the moment. Jack tensed, hand moving instinctively toward his hip. Girl's bedroom. Now. They knew the drill, quickly gathering their books and disappearing down the hall. Jack approached the door cautiously, checking the peephole. The hallway appeared empty. His combat instinct screamed danger just as the first bullet punched through the door. Jack dove for cover behind the kitchen counter as more shots splintered the wood. Glass shattered as windows exploded inward. He could hear Lily scream from the bedroom. "Stay down!" he yelled, drawing his weapon. The door burst open, dark figures pouring in through the smoke of a flash grenade. Jack returned fire, taking down 2 attackers. But more kept coming. He heard movement behind him. Lily had run from the bedroom. "Get back!" he shouted, but it was too late. The window beside her exploded in a shower of glass. Lily cried out, falling backward. Time seemed to slow as Jack watched his daughter collapse. Blood stained her school uniform where glass had sliced her arm and side. He rushed to her, gathering her small form in his arms, his heart pounding with terror and guilt. "Daddy," she whimpered, pressing her face into his chest like she had as a little girl. Blood seeped between his fingers as he tried to apply pressure to her wounds. Aiko appeared from the bedroom, her face pale but determined. She helped Jack lift Lily, keeping pressure on the worst cuts. Together they retreated to the bathroom, the only room without windows, as more bullets tore through the apartment. Jack held his bleeding daughter, fighting back tears of rage and fear. This was his fault. He had brought this danger into their lives. Lily's blood soaked into his shirt, each drop a damning reminder of his failure to protect her. The gunfire suddenly ceased. Footsteps retreated down the hallway. In the ringing silence, Lily's quiet sobs echoed off the bathroom tiles. Jack cradled her closer, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Through the bathroom door, they could hear their home being torn apart, but all Jack could focus on was his daughter's blood staining his hands. Each beat of her racing heart a reminder of how close he had come to losing her. The weight of his choices crashed down on him as he held her, knowing that his attempt to help one child had put his own in mortal danger. The night stretched endlessly as they huddled in the bathroom, waiting for help to arrive, each second marked by Lily's pained breathing and the steady drip of blood on tile. The fluorescent lights of the hospital buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Lily's pale face. Jack sat rigid in the plastic chair beside her bed, watching as the doctor carefully stitched the deepest cut along her forearm. Each pierce of the needle made his stomach clench. "You're being very brave," the Japanese doctor said softly to Lily in careful English. "Just a few more." Lily managed a weak smile, but Jack could see her lower lip trembling. She hadn't cried since they arrived at the emergency room, trying so hard to be strong, just like her mother would have been. The thought twisted something deep in Jack's chest. Aiko hovered near the doorway, her school uniform still spotted with Lily's blood. She hadn't left their side since the attack, even refusing to let Takeda's men take her home when they arrived at the scene. Now she watched the doctor work with wide, guilt-stricken eyes. "The cuts were clean," the doctor explained as he finished the last stitch. "Glass wounds usually are. She'll heal well, but there may be some scarring." Jack nodded mechanically, his throat too tight to speak. 27 stitches total, 3 deep lacerations, and countless smaller cuts. The doctor had already picked out fragments of glass from her side, back, and arms. Each piece they removed felt like an accusation, evidence of his failure to protect her. A nurse came in to wrap clean bandages around Lily's arms and torso. Jack stepped out into the hallway, needing a moment to compose himself. The sterile hospital air made him feel like he was suffocating. "Jack-san?" Aiko's quiet voice followed him. She stood with her hands clasped tightly in front of her, looking smaller than ever in her blood-stained uniform.
"I am so sorry. This is because of me."
Jack shook his head, unable to meet her eyes.
"No, it's because of me.
I'm the one who—" His voice cracked. "I'm the one who should have known better." Through the door's window, he could see Lily wincing as the nurse helped her put on a clean hospital gown. The sight of her in pain felt like physical blows to his chest. What kind of father puts his own child in the crosshairs of a Yakuza war? His phone buzzed, another message from his mother-in-law in Minnesota. She'd been calling nonstop since he texted about the accident. Each message grew more insistent that Lily should come stay with them, where it was safe and normal. Maybe she was right. Jack slumped against the wall, the weight of the decision crushing him. He could picture it. Lily living in their quiet suburban home, going to a regular American school, having friends whose uncles weren't crime bosses. No more looking over their shoulders. No more bullets through windows. She'd be safer there, he whispered, more to himself than Aiko. But Aiko's sharp intake of breath told him she'd heard. You want to send Lily away? I have to consider what's best for her." The words felt like ash in his mouth. "I'm clearly not capable of—" "No." Aiko's outburst made him jump. She never raised her voice. "Please, you cannot send her away. Please." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You and Lily. You are the only real family I have ever known. The only people who showed me what love should be like." Jack finally looked at her, really looked at her, past the proper Japanese schoolgirl exterior to the frightened child beneath, a child who had already lost so much. "If you send her away, you abandon us both," Aiko continued, her voice breaking. "I know I have no right to ask you to stay. This is all my fault. But please, please don't give up on us." The door opened and the nurse stepped out, nodding that they could go back in. Lily sat propped up against pillows, looking small and fragile in the oversized hospital gown. But when she saw Jack, she reached for him with her unbandaged arm. "Dad, are you okay?" The simple question, her concern for him, even while she lay injured, broke something in Jack's chest. He took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I let this happen to you." "You didn't let anything happen," Lily said firmly. "You protected us. You always protect us." Jack's vision blurred with unshed tears. He squeezed her hand gently before stepping back. I need a minute. Will you stay with her?" he asked Aiko, who nodded quickly and took his place by the bed. He wandered the hospital halls in a daze until he found himself outside the small chapel. It was empty inside, lit only by a few electric candles. Jack hadn't set foot in a church since Sarah's funeral, but now he sank into the front pew, his legs no longer able to hold him. "I don't know what to do," he whispered into the silence. "I can't lose her. I can't fail her like I failed Sarah." The tears he'd been holding back finally broke free. Jack buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "Please," he prayed, his voice cracking. "Please help me protect them both. I'm not strong enough on my own. I'm not good enough." The words dissolved into ragged breathing as years of buried grief and guilt poured out. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I can be what they need. But please don't let my choices hurt them anymore." The chapel remained silent except for his broken prayers, the electric candles flickering steadily in the darkness. Jack stayed there, head bowed, until his tears ran dry. A battle-hardened soldier brought to his knees by love for two young girls who needed him to be stronger than he felt. Through the chapel's small window, dawn was breaking over Tokyo. Soon he would have to go back to Lily's room, face decisions about their future, deal with the aftermath of the attack. But for now, he remained in the quiet sanctuary, whispering one final, desperate prayer. "Show me the way. Please just show me the way." The squeak of dress shoes on linoleum made Jack turn. Hiroshi Takeda stood at the end of the sterile hospital corridor, his normally immaculate suit wrinkled and his tie loosened. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. 2 bodyguards flanked him, but he waved them back as he approached. "How is she?" Takeda asked quietly, genuine concern in his voice. 27 stitches, Jack replied, his words clipped with barely contained anger. "She could have died." Takeda bowed deeply, holding the position longer than protocol required. When he straightened, the proud Yakuza leader looked older, worn down by invisible weights. "My own lieutenant," he said, his voice rough with disgust. "Matsuda sold information to our rivals. The attack tonight, it was orchestrated from within my own clan." His fists clenched at his sides. "Everything I built, everything I tried to protect, it's unraveling like thread pulled from a garment." Jack watched the man carefully. He'd seen that look before, in Iraq, on the faces of tribal leaders watching their communities tear themselves apart. The desperate grief of a man watching his world collapse. Aiko stepped forward, reaching tentatively for her uncle's hand. "Uncle, I never wanted—" "No, child." Takeda's voice softened as he looked at his niece. "You wanted freedom, a clean life. I was wrong to deny you that." He squeezed her fingers gently before letting go. "I was wrong about many things." A nurse hurried past, breaking the moment. Through the open door, Jack could see Lily lying small and pale against the hospital sheets, finally drifting to sleep as the pain medication took hold. The sight sparked something in him. Not just grief or guilt, but fierce determination. "We can't keep living like this," Jack said, looking over our shoulders, jumping at shadows. "The girls deserve better." Takeda nodded slowly. "My enemies smell weakness now. They will not stop until they destroy everything I care about, including Aiko." He met Jack's eyes. "And now, they will come for your daughter too, simply because you tried to help." Jack stepped closer to the Yakuza leader, lowering his voice. "Then we end this, not with more violence, but by giving them something better to believe in." He glanced at Aiko, then back at his sleeping daughter. "The next generation shouldn't have to inherit our wars." For a long moment, Takeda was silent, studying Jack's face. Then he spoke quietly in Japanese, words Jack recognized from his years stationed here. "The bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists." "What does that mean for us?" Jack asked. "It means perhaps it is time to bend, to change, before we break completely." Takeda straightened his tie with practiced precision. "I have connections, legitimate businesses, ways to transition my people to honest work, if they choose it." His jaw tightened. "But first, we must deal with the traitors, without bloodshed," Jack insisted firmly. A ghost of a smile touched Takeda's lips. "You Americans, always so idealistic." But he nodded. "I will try it your way, Harmon-san. For the sake of the children, if nothing else." Jack felt something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but purpose. He thought of his late wife, of her unwavering belief that one person's courage could change lives. She would have told him to stay and fight, not with fists or bullets, but with the kind of strength that transforms hearts. "We'll need to move Lily and Aiko somewhere safe while we work this out," he said. "No." Aiko's voice was quiet but firm. "No more running. No more hiding." She looked between the 2 men with determination beyond her years. "This is our home. We should fight for it." Jack studied the girl who had become like a second daughter to him, seeing echoes of Lily's stubborn spirit in her stance. These girls weren't just victims to be protected. They were the reason to make things right. "She's right," he said finally. "Running won't solve anything. We take them home, increase security, and face this head on." He turned to Takeda. "But we do it together. No more separate worlds. Your family, my family, just family." Takeda considered this, then bowed again, this time as an equal. "Together then," he agreed. The doctor appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Harmon, Lily can go home now. The medication will make her drowsy, but she should rest comfortably." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of his decision settle onto his shoulders. It wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance, danger, and hard choices ahead. But looking at Lily's sleeping face, at Aiko's hopeful eyes, he knew it was right. With gentle hands, He gathered his daughter into his arms, her bandaged form light against his chest. Aiko walked beside them as they left the hospital, Takeda and his men forming a protective circle around them. The night air was cool on their faces as they stepped outside. Jack held Lily closer, feeling her steady breathing against his heart. They would go home, not in fear, but in strength. Not in retreat, but in resolve. "Ready?" he asked Aiko softly. She slipped her small hand into his free one and nodded. "Ready." Together, they walked toward the waiting cars, each step a choice to stand their ground, to fight for something better than survival, to build a future where both girls could grow up without shadows hanging over them. Behind them, the hospital lights blazed against the dark sky, marking this moment of decision. The time for running was over. Now was the time to stand. The warehouse loomed against the pre-dawn sky, its metal walls dark and forbidding. Jack crouched behind a stack of crates, checking his pistol one last time. Beside him, Takeda adjusted his suit jacket, revealing the glint of his own weapon. "Are you certain about this?" Jack whispered, his breath visible in the cold morning air. Takeda nodded grimly. "Matsuda will come. His pride demands it." He glanced at Jack with newfound respect.
You didn't have to join this fight.
"Yes, I did." Jack thought of Lily's bandaged face, of Aiko's trembling hands. Some things are worth fighting for. They had left the girl safely hidden at a Buddhist temple, protected by Takeda's most trusted men. The plan was simple but dangerous. Draw out the traitors, end the threat once and for all. Jack's military training screamed that it was reckless, but his heart knew it was necessary. A car's headlight swept across the warehouse entrance, then another. Jack counted 4 vehicles total, more than they'd expected. His grip tightened on his weapon. "Remember," Takeda murmured, "Matsuda is mine." The warehouse doors groaned open. Footsteps echoed on concrete as shadows moved inside. Jack recognized Matsuda's voice, sharp with arrogance, speaking rapid Japanese. Behind him came members of the rival clan, their tattoos visible even in the dim light. "Show yourself, Takeda," Matsuda called out. "Face your failure." Takeda stepped from the shadows, his presence commanding even now. "The only failure here is yours, Matsuda. You betrayed our family." Jack moved silently to his position, using the darkness for cover. He counted 12 men. Bad odds, but he'd faced worse in Iraq. His finger rested near the trigger, waiting. Matsuda laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the metal walls. "Family? You've grown weak, old man. Protecting gaijin, harboring runners." He spat on the ground. "The clan needs new leadership." "Is that what they promised you?" Takeda's voice carried genuine pity. "You fool. They'll dispose of you once they have what they want." One of the rival bosses stepped forward, drawing his weapon. That was Jack's signal. He squeezed off 2 quick shots, taking out the lights above. The warehouse plunged into chaos. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like lightning. Jack moved fast, using the confusion to his advantage. His combat training took over. 2 quick strikes dropped the nearest attacker. A bullet whizzed past his ear as he rolled behind a forklift. Through the mayhem, he glimpsed Takeda and Matsuda circling each other like wolves. The betrayer had drawn a knife, its blade catching what little light remained. "You're finished," Matsuda screamed, lunging forward. Takeda moved with surprising speed, deflecting the blade. "I trained you better than this," he said sadly, before striking with devastating precision. Jack couldn't watch more. 2 rivals had spotted him. He dispatched one with a clean shot to the shoulder, then grappled with the second. The man was strong, but Jack had desperation on his side. He thought of Lily's smile, of Aiko's hope for freedom. With a surge of strength, he slammed his attacker into a steel beam. The fighting grew more intense. Jack's muscles burned as he moved from cover to cover, picking his shots carefully. He wouldn't kill. He'd made that promise to himself long ago. But he made sure none of his targets would be getting up soon. A pained cry cut through the gunfire. Jack turned to see Matsuda on his knees, Takeda standing over him. The lieutenant's knife clattered to the ground. "It's over," Takeda announced, his voice carrying authority despite his breathlessness. "Tell your new friends to stand down." The remaining rivals hesitated, looking to their leader. The man assessed the situation, several of his men down, his alliance with Matsuda crumbling. Finally, he lowered his weapon. "This territory isn't worth the blood," he said gruffly. "We're done here." Jack kept his gun raised until the last rival had backed out of the warehouse. Only then did he allow himself to breathe deeply, tasting copper and gunpowder in the air. Takeda bound Matsuda's hands with his own tie. "You'll face the clan's justice," he told his former lieutenant. "But you'll live to remind others what happens to traitors." Dawn was breaking as they emerged from the warehouse. Jack's shirt was torn, blood seeping from a graze on his arm. But he was alive. They both were. "The girls," he said, already moving toward their car. "Safe," Takeda assured him. "It's finished now." They drove in silence to the temple. As they climbed the stone steps, the sun crested the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Jack's heart lightened with each step. Lily and Aiko waited in the temple garden, wrapped in borrowed blankets. When they saw Jack and Takeda approaching, their faces lit up with relief and joy. "Dad!" Lily ran to him, careful of his injuries as she hugged him tight. Aiko embraced her uncle, tears streaming down her face.
"I was so worried,"
she whispered in Japanese. Jack held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair. The morning sun warmed his face as he looked out over the peaceful garden. They had survived the night. More than that, they had won something precious, a chance for a new beginning. Together, they walked down from the temple, leaving the darkness behind them. The sky grew brighter with each step, promising a new day filled with hope. Cherry blossoms drifted on the breeze, their delicate pink petals dancing against the blue spring sky. Jack stood in the courtyard of an ancient temple, watching as Takeda addressed his assembled men. The scene felt surreal. Dozens of tattooed Yakuza members kneeling respectfully on stone paths while monks went about their daily routines nearby. Takeda spoke with quiet authority, his words carrying clearly in the morning air. Though Jack couldn't understand all the Japanese, he caught fragments: honor, change, gratitude. Behind him, Lily and Aiko sat on a wooden bench, their shoulders touching. Both girls had healed well. Lily's cuts had faded to thin pink lines, while Aiko's eyes had lost their haunted look. "My time as leader ends today," Takeda announced in English, switching languages for Jack's benefit. "Our faction will disperse honorably. Those who wish to leave this life may do so without shame. Those who must stay will join other clans, but remember the lessons of honor we learned here." The Sizablank. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some men looked shocked, others relieved. A few older members nodded with understanding. Jack noticed several touching the religious beads wrapped around their wrists, a reminder that even in their harsh world, faith still had a place. Takeda continued, his voice strong despite the emotion behind his words. "We have lost our way in recent years, pursuing power at the cost of our humanity. It took an outsider," he gestured to Jack, "to remind me what true strength means. Not violence or fear, but protecting those we love." Jack felt uncomfortable under the sudden attention, but he stood straight, meeting the eyes that turned his way. He wasn't here as a soldier or a gaijin, but as a father who had helped another father find his way back to what mattered. After the ceremony, the crowd gradually dispersed. Some men approached Takeda to bow deeply and exchange quiet words. Others simply walked away, already removing their clan pins and loosening their ties. The Yakuza tattoos would remain, but their meaning was changing, becoming marks of a past life rather than a current allegiance. Aiko rose from the bench and walked to her uncle, her steps sure and steady. She wore a simple blue dress instead of her usual school uniform, a small symbol of her new freedom. Takeda's stern expression softened as she approached. "The arrangements are complete," he told her gently. "You will have a new name, a new school in Kyoto. The family I chose is good. The mother was once like you, seeking a fresh start." Tears welled in Aiko's eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you, Uncle, for letting me go." Takeda placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare show of physical affection. "I should have done so long ago. Your father, my brother, would have wanted you to be free." Lily joined them, pulling Aiko into a tight hug. "Promise you'll write to me? Through the special address?" "Every week," Aiko assured her, managing a watery smile. "And maybe someday when it's safer." Jack watched the girls say goodbye, his heart aching with familiar loss, but also hope. Sometimes letting go was the greatest act of love. He had learned that with his wife's passing, And now these girls were learning it too. A monk appeared with tea, serving it formally on a low table in the courtyard. Jack and Takeda knelt across from each other, the steam rising between them like an offering of peace. "My men respect you," Takeda said, lifting his cup. "Not just for your fighting skills, but for your heart. You could have ignored Aiko's struggle. Many would have." Jack sipped the bitter green tea, choosing his words carefully. "Where I served, in Iraq, I saw too many people look away from others' pain. It eats at your soul after a while." "Yes," Takeda nodded slowly. "I have looked away too often. Told myself it was necessary, that tradition demanded it. But traditions must change, or they become chains." They drank in companionable silence for a moment, watching as Lily and Aiko walked the temple grounds one last time, their heads bent close in conversation. "Will you be safe?" Jack asked finally. "Retiring like this, there must be those who disapprove." "There are always those who disapprove." Takeda's smile was slight, but genuine. "But I have made arrangements. Some of my most loyal men will stay nearby, and I have investments, legal ones, that will keep me comfortable." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden box, sliding it across the table. "For you, a token of respect." Jack opened it carefully. Inside lay an intricately carved netsuke, a traditional toggle used to fasten Japanese robes. This one depicted two samurai standing back to back, protecting each other. "It belonged to my grandfather," Takeda explained. "He taught me about honor before I forgot its meaning. Now it should go to someone who truly understands it." Jack started to protest, but Takeda held up a hand. "Please, accept it as a father's gratitude for helping to free his niece." Understanding the deeper meaning behind the gift, Jack bowed slightly. "Thank you." They rose as Aiko's escort arrived, a kind-faced woman in a conservative suit who would accompany her to her new life. The girls shared one final, fierce hug before Aiko walked to the waiting car, her small suitcase clutched tightly. Takeda squared his shoulders, emotion flickering across his usually stoic face as he watched his niece prepare to leave. He turned to Jack and extended his hand, a Western gesture that somehow felt right for this moment. Jack clasped it firmly. They stood there briefly, two fathers from vastly different worlds, connected by the unexpected bonds of honor and family. No words were needed. Everything important had already been said. The morning sun filtered through the apartment windows, casting warm patches of light across the small breakfast table. Jack watched as Lily carefully spread jam on her toast, her movements still a bit cautious with the healing cuts on her arms. The bandages were smaller now, just a few remaining strips of white where the deeper cuts had been. "Dad, you're hovering again," Lily said with a slight smile, not looking up from her breakfast. "I'm fine, really." Jack cleared his throat and busied himself with pouring more coffee. "Just making sure you're eating enough," the doctor said. "I know what the doctor said," Lily cut in, but her tone was gentle. "Proper nutrition helps healing. You've only reminded me about 10 times this week." The familiar banter felt good, normal. After weeks of tension and fear, their morning routine had returned. Jack still checked the locks 3 times each night, still scanned the streets before letting Lily walk to school. But the crushing weight of constant danger had lifted. "I got an A on my history test," Lily mentioned between bites of toast. "And Mei Chan asked if I could come to her house this weekend to study." Jack nodded, relief washing over him at such ordinary concerns. "That's great, sweetheart. Both the grade and Mei-chan." He paused. "You know I'm proud of you, right? Not just for the schoolwork, but for everything. For being so brave with Aiko." Lily set down her toast, meeting his eyes. "I know you were scared, Dad, but I couldn't just leave her alone. You taught me that, about standing up for people who need help." "Still," Jack said, "seeing you hurt." He trailed off, the memory of holding her bleeding form still too fresh. "I don't regret it," Lily said firmly. "Aiko was worth it. She's safe now, getting to start over. That's what matters." Jack reached across the table and squeezed her hand. His daughter had grown so much in these past months, not just taller, but stronger inside. She reminded him more of her mother every day. That afternoon, they took their new daily walk through the local park. It had become their ritual during Lily's recovery, Short stretches at first, now longer meandering paths under the cherry trees. Other families strolled nearby, children chasing each other across the grass. The normalcy felt like a gift. "Can we get ice cream?" Lily asked, pointing to a vendor's cart. Jack pulled out his wallet. "Sure. But don't tell the doctor I'm letting you have sugar." They sat on a bench, enjoying their treats in comfortable silence. An elderly Japanese couple walked past, bowing slightly. Jack returned the gesture, no longer feeling like such an outsider. This neighborhood had become home. "I got another text from Aiko," Lily said after a while. "She's settling in at her new school. Says her host family is really nice." Jack nodded. The protection program had placed Aiko with a family in Osaka, far enough away to be safe, close enough to still feel connected to her culture. "That's good to hear. She said to tell you thank you again, for everything." Jack just smiled, licking a drip of ice cream from his cone. The weight of what they'd done, helping Aiko escape, standing up to the clan, felt different now. Not lighter exactly, but more purposeful. Like his military service, it had been about protecting those who needed protection. That evening, Jack prepared a simple dinner of grilled fish and rice. Lily set the table, humming softly to herself as she arranged the chopsticks. The apartment filled with warm, homey scents. "Remember when you first tried to cook Japanese food?" Lily teased. "That burnt miso soup?" Jack chuckled. "Hey, I've improved. Your mother would be proud. She always said I needed to learn my way around a kitchen." At the mention of her mom, Lily's expression softened. "She would be proud of both of us, I think. For making a life here. For helping Aiko." "Yeah," Jack said quietly. "I think she would." They sat down to eat, the evening light painting the walls gold. Before picking up their chopsticks, Lily reached for Jack's hand. It was something they'd done since her mother died, sharing a moment of prayer before meals. But tonight felt different. Jack closed his eyes, feeling Lily's small hand in his. The words came easily now, not weighted with grief or guilt as they had been for so long. "Thank you, Lord, for this food, and for keeping us safe. Thank you for giving us the strength to help others, and for showing us that being brave doesn't mean being perfect. Thank you for letting us be exactly who we are, a father and daughter finding our way together." "Amen," Lily whispered. Jack opened his eyes to find his daughter smiling at him, her face full of love and understanding. In that moment, he felt complete peace wash over him. He wasn't just a soldier trying to be a father, or a widower trying to hold things together. He was simply Jack Harmon, doing his best to live with honor and compassion, raising a daughter who already understood those values better than he ever had. They ate their dinner, talking about school and friends and weekend plans. Normal things, beautiful things. Through the window, Jack could see the lights of Tokyo beginning to twinkle on, a city that had become more than just a posting or an escape. It was their home now, a place where they had both found their strength and their peace. The evening settled around them like a comfortable blanket, filled with the quiet sounds of chopsticks clicking and Lily's gentle laughter as she told him about her day. Jack listened, his heart full, finally at peace with all the pieces of himself. Veteran, widower, foreigner, father. They weren't separate roles anymore, but parts of a whole person. A person who had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply open your heart and let love guide the way. Autumn painted Tokyo in brilliant shades of red and gold. The morning air carried a crisp bite that made Jack pull his light jacket closer as he and Lily climbed the stone steps to the Shinto shrine. The familiar scent of burning incense drifted through the torii gates, mixing with the earthy smell of fallen leaves. Lily walked beside him, carefully holding a bundle of white chrysanthemums wrapped in pale paper. She'd chosen them herself at the flower shop, insisting they were perfect because they reminded her of the photos of her mother's wedding bouquet. "Do you think Mom would have liked it here?" Lily asked softly as they passed under the vermilion gates. Jack smiled, memories washing over him. "She would have loved it. Your mother always appreciated beautiful places that felt peaceful." He glanced at the ancient trees surrounding them, their branches swaying gently in the morning breeze. She would have probably sketched the whole shrine in her journal. They stopped at the purification fountain, and Jack showed Lily how to properly cleanse their hands and mouth before approaching the shrine. The ritual felt comforting, like washing away the lingering shadows of recent events. Other visitors moved quietly around them, elderly couples walking arm in arm, mothers with small children, a few tourists taking photos. The peaceful atmosphere wrapped around them like a warm blanket. As they approached the main shrine building, Jack noticed how Lily's steps slowed, becoming more deliberate. She'd been so young when Sarah passed, just 5 years old. Sometimes he worried that her memories of her mother were fading, replaced by stories and photographs. They found a quiet spot near a small garden where they could place their offerings. Lily carefully arranged the chrysanthemums, making sure each stem lay perfectly. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stepped back. "What should we say?" she whispered. Jack knelt beside her on the smooth stone. "Whatever's in your heart, sweetheart. Your mom always said honest words mean more than fancy ones." Lily nodded, closing her eyes.
"Hi, Mom,"
she began, her voice barely audible.
"I miss you."
"I wish you could see Japan. It's so different from Texas, but beautiful in its own way." She paused, gathering her thoughts.
"I made a new friend named Aiko. She needed help, like the people you used to help at the shelter. I think you would have liked her."
Jack's throat tightened as he listened to his daughter speak. She continued, telling her mother about school, about learning Japanese, about the small details of their life here. Her words flowed naturally, like a conversation with someone just out of sight. When Lily finished, she looked at Jack expectantly. He cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice. "Sarah," he began, "you'd be so proud of our girl. She has your courage and your compassionate heart." He reached for Lily's hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you for the years we had together, for teaching me what love really means. I'm trying my best to pass those lessons on." A cool breeze rustled through the trees, sending a shower of red maple leaves spiraling down around them. For a moment, it felt like a tender caress. "I think," Jack continued, "I'm finally learning to live again. Not just survive, to trust in goodness, even when the world seems dark." He glanced at Lily, who was wiping tears from her cheeks. "We're going to be okay." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the leaves dance on the stone path. Other visitors came and went, their footsteps soft against the ancient stones. The morning sun climbed higher, warming their backs. As they stood to leave, Jack caught a glimpse of a familiar figure standing near one of the massive trees that lined the shrine's outer path. Takeda, dressed not in his usual sharp suit but in simple civilian clothes, stood with quiet dignity. Gone was the aura of danger that had once surrounded him. Now he looked like any other middle-aged Japanese man paying his respects at the shrine. Their eyes met across the distance. Takeda bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect not just for the living, but for the dead. When he straightened, Jack saw something in his expression he recognized. The look of a man who had found his way back to his better self. Before Jack could respond, Takeda turned and disappeared into the stream of visitors, becoming just another face in the crowd. It felt right somehow. This quiet acknowledgement of their shared journey toward redemption. "Dad?" Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Are you ready to go?" Jack looked down at his daughter's upturned face, seeing traces of Sarah in her gentle smile. "Yeah, sweetheart. Let's go home." They descended the shrine steps, hand in hand, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. The morning had grown warmer, and the city was coming fully alive around them. Somewhere, a temple bell rang, its deep tone resonating through the air. Jack breathed in deeply, feeling the weight of grief and fear continuing to lift from his shoulders. The future stretched out before them, like the path ahead. Not a straight line, perhaps, but one filled with possibility. For the first time in years, Jack believed the future could hold more than survival. It could hold joy. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Harmon, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please, don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.